Good morning and welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I am here on the Iconic Production channel as always with my co-host and Lankor my Rune Lord, Evan. Evan, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
We're going to wrap up, he said, uh, as if this is not part three of our look at the Third Age. And we've got some really exciting things coming up for Exploring Glorantha this summer. We're going to be, some secret interviews that are in the mix. And then we're going to start looking at the different magic systems and how they fit into the world of Glorantha. But today we're wrapping up the Third Age. And before I allow Evan to give us a brief, succinct, a concise recap of what we discussed last time. We got back from Chaosium Con, and let me tell you, that show is the best. Uh, Evan, why don't you start? How was your Chaosium Con?
My Chaosium Con was awesome. Um,
You won the
I,
tournament of Masters of Luck and Death.
uh, I mean, I definitely feel like a winner. I have to
Oh,
say
I thought I muted
that.
my mic. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so yes, I beat my prediction for the RuneQuest Masters tournament. I did advance to the semifinal round, which was a lot of fun. Shout out to all the participants. What a great group of people, and the game masters and the organizers. I mean, it was just um, fantastic from beginning to end. And I did participate in the final by being in the audience to cheer on the finalists, and it was just a great experience. I think the winner was clearly the right person. I mean, that person won RuneQuest, and
And it was
so
advanced.
and it was advanced. So, and we played the playtest rules, and it was and in the final there was like an update to the rules that they played with. So we got to see the development of the game that is still ongoing. They're still taking in playtest feedback. Um, I have to say that I was a little skeptical about the sort of 5 phase combat. I mean, it sounds like, oh, we're going to make combat less complex. We're going to move away from the strike rank system with this parallel. It's not to replace the current RuneQuest, but to
Yeah.
provide sort of an alternative. Um, it's hard to find an analogy. Is this the basic box, and you can play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or you can play the basic set? I don't know, but
I mean, they did liken it a little bit to core Call of Cthulhu and then Pulp Cthulhu.
yeah, that's right. This is sort of pulp Glorantha. I don't know, but um, uh, you think, oh, but we're going to simplify it by having 5 phases of a combat round. I thought, that sounds more complicated, but actually it played very smoothly overall. I have to say that I need to I experience it a little bit more. But the bottom line is, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. And I think the rules facilitated that in the main. And so I would be very optimistic about this new iteration, this parallel and interesting iteration that's going to be set in Pavis and the Big Rebel. I think it's exciting. Um, so yeah, just had a terrific time, and then I played in a non-Glorantha game. I played a Call of Cthulhu scenario in the Friday evening with the Sons of the Singularity. Shout out to them,
Yeah.
Joss and Jesse. Um, they were amazing, and had a great time. And then I went to a lot of presentations. There was an amazing video that somebody who is on this call created from archival footage, which will be eventually making it to YouTube. Exciting historical documentation of Chaosium's past. Um, and I really want to shout out Matt Ryan, who is the cartographer in-house for Chaosium. He does floor plans, he does, city maps, area maps, world maps, and uh, I went to his talk about, making maps, but really it was about living a creative life. And what an amazing person Matt Ryan is. So shout out to him. He is so generous and thoughtful and kind, and, definitely gives you permission to just go and try stuff. Go and try stuff. And, I thought his talk was, one of the best things that I've ever seen at Chaosium Con, and I've
Hmm.
seen a lot of great stuff.
And
Anyway,
Matt's
and so
a great
yeah,
person, just a good human
so
being.
absolutely, I'm going to be following a lot more closely everything that he's doing, for Glorantha and beyond. But he's working on, I think, pretty much all the lines. Um, uh, Although he's not the, there's so much to do. He's not the exclusive cartographer and stuff, but he's very thoughtful. I thought a very interesting thing was, he grounds, of course, tries to make things, even for a fantasy game, a reality. And he says that oftentimes authors, perhaps like me, might, create a floor plan, and then he looks at it and says that would never exist in real life. Like that that there are rules for, like, how human beings live and exist in space. And then he tries to bring people back to, like, understanding, like, hey, real people have to live here. And I thought that was another great observation. Like, we need to think about, we're in a fantasy world, but the verisimilitude of it is important.
Yeah.
So that was just great, and just a great time to interacting with people.
Yeah.
Of course, President Rick Mites, what an incredible person, friendly,
100%.
and generous with his time. Got to spend a little time with Sandy Peterson, the great old one. I mean, it was great. And I have to give a shout out to my cousin Mark, who came with me for the first time, and he will be back. So thank you, everybody. Chaosium Con was just another wonderful triumph, and 50th anniversary of Chaosium. Congratulations to one and all. May there be many more 50, iterations of 50 years on into the future for our children and our children's children of
Hmm.
this great company.
Yeah, and I got to present a video. We did a walkthrough of the Chaosium offices in 1992, as well as clips from a Cthulhu for President rally. Cryptwright, yes, that was a Matt Ryan discussion, and I always enjoy chatting with Matt. Just a great human being. Uh, Won a Stormbringer companion at the auction. Lost a copy of Demon Magic for $5 because my hand didn't jump up fast enough. But yeah, overall, got to go out to have dinner with Evan and his cousin twice. Dream Shaper was out there. Tink was out there. I got to see all of them. Just all in all. Oh, and I got my copy of Fire and Sky, Cults of RuneQuest. And that book is just exceptional. They knocked it right out of the park. All right. Wrapping up our look at the third age of mankind. It was the dawn of the third age of mankind. 10 years after the Earth Minbari. Wait, no. Nope, that's the intro to Babylon 5. The third age of Glorantha. And we covered quite a bit last time. We talked about Harik. We talked about the tournament of luck and death. We talked about the rise of the Lunar Empire. We covered a bit about Jareel the Razorous and the uh, several ill-fated uh, kings of Tarsh, who I guess you can kind of say went out on a high note, so to speak. And so yeah, we're here. We're kind of at the crux. We're now at the point in RuneQuest Glorantha when you sit down to make your characters. We're getting to the point, or we're almost there, of hey, here's what your grandparents were doing, right? The fight against the Lunars in the early 600s is kind of the starting point for Glorantha. And we're going to talk today about the conquest of Dragon Pass, the Dragon Rise, um, a lot of other things. And this kind of wraps up our overview. And again, as we said, we're trying to be the 100 level introductory course to Glorantha. So of course, our temporal look at Glorantha took, I think, 12 episodes to get through, not counting God time. That was just, yeah, so like 15 hours of Gloranthan learning. So, Evan, let's jump in to the conquest of Dragon Pass and Prax.
So um, we've talked around a lot of this, but let's set the scene. So it's the early 1500s, and the our heroes start in the 1600s.
Yes.
But in the early 1500s, the disposition the of these territories are that um, uh, Tarsh is a client state of the Lunar Empire, a closely allied kingdom. Um, uh, Sartar has been formed forged in Dragon Pass, and the tribes are united under the rule of the heirs of Sartar. Um, and then further south, you have the Holy Country under the rule of the God King
Mm-hmm.
Belentar, and further west are the Grayslands, and to the east are Prax, the ruins of Pavis, and then out into the wasteland. Um, and the early 1500s start off with a bang, where there's a revolt in Tarsh, and a king that we've talked about in our Tarsh episode, King Palashi Longaxe, briefly expels lunar control, and he's supported by Sartar, the kingdom of Sartar,
Mm-hmm.
in this. Um, and of course, the Lunars are interested in going south, because the oceans are being reopened. The vast wealth that can come from oceanic trade um, is attracting them, and um, and uh, the Southerners are starting to be a problem. We have this revolt. It's being supported by this other kingdom that is becoming exceptionally powerful and rich because of the trade that's coming through the Holy Country. And so, for a variety of reasons, security reasons, economic reasons, the Lunar Empire starts to really focus on capturing the pass, and using it as a platform to further spread the good news of the goddess, and to have to enrich itself, and to expand its control over the center of the continent.
And they have
Um,
some early and massive victories.
yeah,
Uh, Tarkalor Tree Killer is killed along with the Feathered Horse Queen, like the last real king of Dragon Pass for a while. The Red Emperor, uh, along with Jariel, pulls a reverse meatloaf and rides a bat out of hell into, uh, or I guess that's just a regular meatloaf. You have to ride the bat into hell for the rare reverse meatloaf. The Crimson Bat, this horrific chaos demon that is really more of like a siege weapon doesn't even describe it, right?
yeah. I mean, it is the Lunar Empire's weapon of mass destruction.
It is.
When they had to use it and many other powers to defeat the nomads. a couple of generations
Mm-hmm.
before, which resulted in the death of Hanil. Um, and they call upon it again because although they crush the rebellion and kill Palashi Long Axe, and then they reassert the control of Tarsh, and then they begin to um, push down into Sartar. Tarkalor, Troll Killer, and his Feathered Horse Queen wife, both are killed at
Mm-hmm.
the Battle of Grizzly Peak. And we're starting to, the grandparents,
Yep.
in the history, can fight at Grizzly Peak. They can die there. And
Most people's grandparents die somewhere in
right.
or around there. Yeah.
But the Lunars are stopped momentarily. They are not able to convert that victory into complete conquest, and so it takes another 20 years to then sort of set up the circumstances to then advance into Sartar itself.
Yeah.
But they do. The Bat um, is involved in reducing several cities, um, and then Jariel, at the age of 14, leads her troops
Mm-hmm.
over the side of the mountain and over the wall into Boldholm. And there is a slaughter. The royal family is destroyed. The flame of Sartar is extinguished, and the rest is cleanup. And the Lunars establish a military rule over Sartar, and begin to realize their plans of draining off that wealth, controlling things, and then using it as a staging ground to try and get into the Holy Country and to try to access the sea. Now we know from our talk about Belantar that the
Doesn't go
initial
well. Yeah.
the building wall battle does not go well for them. They are unable to make it, but then they also think, well, there are other ways to get to the ocean. They move into Prax. They have some initial setbacks there. Um, but learn from them and eventually crush the Praxians at the Battle of Moonbroth.
Mm-hmm.
They march um, to Pavis, which had been established by Sartarite um, people from Sartar who saw the writing on the wall. They thought, the Lunars are coming. Uh, let's put an outpost far away from them. Why would they come out there? Well, and we talk about this in the Pavis
Mm-hmm.
episode. Um, but in any case, the ruling dynasty of the Pavis outside the walls, New Pavis, a much smaller city than the one that was created in the Second Age, which is now in rubble as the Big Rubble. Um, the inhabitants of the city throw open the gates to the Lunars. They do not want to siege. They allow the ruling family to be eliminated, not escape. They do not escape, to at least in the acknowledged histories. They instead are disposed of, and the Lunars then have Pavis and control of the upper river area, and then begin to move down to try and build a port at the river delta at Corfu. There's a lot of interesting stories about that. It's not super successful, but they are playing a long game
Mm.
and exploring lots of alternatives. Um,
Now, right around this time in 1613, this is where we get some of my favorite characters from the more recent history. I would say like more like characters as opposed to myths or legends, right?
right.
We get Kalir Starbrow's sadly ill-fated rebellion. She manages to get a little bit of a spark at the Flame of Sartar. People rise up, and I will be honest, another one of my favorite characters. It gets brutally put down uh, uh, by Fazor Wisered. I love Wide Red. He is one of the most fascinating characters in this time period for me. And sadly, uh, the duck hunt is kind of the, I mean, aside from, I mean, Hotspring Tree Leaper losing his hands and being sent into a lunar hell, and Kalir Starbrow going on her rebellion being put down as the Prince of Sartar and going on a poorly resolved Lightbringer quest. The ducks are blamed for Kalir's rebellion, and the duck hunt happens. And basically, there's this bounty put on the ducks of Duck Point in that area, and it is very successful right up until everyone starts going, "Hey, have you noticed that the less ducks that we have, the more undead we have coming out of the marsh?" Nice. And that's kind of when everyone in Dragon Pass realizes that these Humoct worshipping ducks have been keeping Delecti the Necromancer pinned up in the marsh, and that by slaughtering the ducks, they reach this threshold where there's no longer enough ducks to keep the undead kind of pinned in.
Yeah, Starbarrow's Rebellion is interesting. It's something that is covered a lot in the old Worms footnotes. Greg Stafford did sort of an early freeform play with the High Council of Sartar sort of dealing with the igniting moments of the rebellion. There's an initial success when the occupying forces try to take over the hill of Orlanth Victorious, but and the governor general is killed. But that unfortunately for the Sartarites brings the most successful general. He's a provincial general. He's a Tarshite, but he's really the best lunar general that they have, Fazir Widered, and he crushes the rebellion.
There's a little bit of Cincinnatus in my head whenever I read about Wide Red. Like
he is not so ideological. He is a lunarized Orlanthi, but he is one of those honorable enemy kinds of characters. Now, if you're, but he is ruthless too. He crushes the rebellion, and in order to sort of keep the peace, he comes up, I think, with advisors of, we're going to pin it on the ducks. We're going to take this more powerless minority rather than broadly punishing the tribes, which will foster more rebellion. We're going to pin it on the ducks, and this means that there's an enormous fleeing into Prax, down into Esrolia of ducks, and many ducks ruthlessly killed by their neighbors who are who see short-term advantage in participating,
because there's a bounty. And yes, Kryptonite, we are talking about anthropomorphic duck people in Glorantha right now.
That's right.
You should read. If you don't want to read the lore, might I suggest 40 episodes of exploring Glorantha,
including one that focuses on ducks.
There's an entire episode on ducks, and I think we went. The order goes duck, and then goose.
We haven't really got to the goose yet, but
Are there? No, there are no geese people.
That's right. But there are other bird people, which I hope in a future episode we'll be talking about. So Fazir establishes himself as extremely competent, and this is a problem in the future for him because it creates a great deal of jealousy and fear that he will be so successful, his troops so loyal, that He's a threat to other people like the King of Tarsh and others. So he has an interesting path on into the future. But right now, he is the premier general. He is, lauded and ascendant in Dragon Pass.
Jack
Um,
has a good
and
point that the duck hunt is a echo of the wolf hunt
hmm,
that happens right before there.
right, right. Dealing again with the sort of disfavored uh, minorities. I mean, the Telmori are certainly more aggressive. The Ducks generally are not, raiding their neighbors, etc. I mean, they truly are scapegoats.
Hmm.
Um, and the wolf hunt against the
More,
Telmori
yeah,
is more
punitive.
mixed, but um, but also out of proportion to the kind of maybe offenses, um, and sort of looks at the cracks in Sardarite society. I mean, Sardar forged the core of these Orlanthi tribes. But then he also brought in the Telmori as another tribe of Sartar. He brought in the Ducks, and um, and as the royal line is almost extinguished, the sort of peacemaking and the sovereignty, the peace of the past is breaking down, and it could go into anarchy. The sort of jealousies and going after weaker neighbors and all of that. And of course, the Lunars are exploiting that because it helps them control uh, the territory.
Now,
And
oh,
they Vazir does allow Starbrow to go into exile rather than be imprisoned or executed, and that means that she's still in play.
yeah,
Um,
and
and for the looking to the future to try and get back on top, because she does have a tie to the
mhm,
princely line.
yeah. First of all, let me just apologize to everybody. I am fighting a sinus infection, hence all of the hopefully remembered muting uh, going forward. The Lunars have some significant advances in this point. They break into Holy Country. They, as Evan said, they conquer Prax. Uh, King Broyan of the Hendriki, kind of aided by some Sartorites, try to fight the Lunars, but end up being besieged in Whitewall, which the Lunars then take because of the Crimson Bat. And then the Lunar priests magically and ritually kill Orlanth and Ernalda, plunging Dragon Pass into the Great Winter. Like the wind stop happens, the Great Winter happens, and it's over a year later that King Broyan manages to free Orlanth and Ernalda from this Schrodinger's cat mythological death state. Unlike Yelm, right, who lives and dies, right? They were magically killed, but were able to be brought back. And this sees, there's a this is kind of the tipping point where things start to work more in the favor of the Sartorites, because we get, the Battle of Auroch Hills. We get the Siege of Notchet broken 2 years later by the Wolf Pirates, the Esrolians, and the Hendriki, including a new character that is coming onto the stage that you may have heard of. A small incidental person in the mythology known as Argrath White Bull. And yes, thank you. I do need a Chalana Arroy healer. Where is my Chalana Arroy healer? I need this disease spirit. Uh, Actually, I do have a Chalana Arroy healer. I believe his name is Augmentin. He's helping me deal with this disease spirit. But we see by 1625, Argrath has kind of rallied this White Bull Society, several other magical societies, and they defeat the Lunar army in Prax at the Second Battle of Moonbroth. And Argrath is crowned king, and this is the start. This is the start of it. I've made it very clear on this show where I stand on the whole lunar uh, Sartarite uh, balance. I think that's clear. But this is the start of essentially Gloranthan's or Sartar's return of the king, if you will, right? Argrath is now on a path to claim not only the princedom of Boldhome, but king of Dragon Pass and take the fight to the Lunars.
So these are some unfortunate setbacks for the Empire. You know, they they start out, you know, on top, right? They've
Yeah.
crushed all opposition. They're operating freely down in what's left of the Holy Country after making sure that Belentar does not come back. Reducing White Wall, seemingly getting rid of King Broyan, and then, you know, as you said, ritually killing Orlantha and Ernalda. The killing Ernalda was like an excess by a Shargash priest. Um, but they definitely wanted to chain Orlantha. And this is like a regional suppression of these great powers. You know, you can't really kill gods, but as we talked a little bit about, you know, over in Frenella, when we talked about this thing called the Syndic's Band, the god of silver feet was killed and seemingly was gone for like a century.
Yeah.
Um, uh, uh, by the Lascami. You know, Orlantha and Arnalda are gone for less than 2 years, but that's very, very bad for the Sartorites. It weakens them, and the Lunars are like, well, you know, we can get resupplied from the north and everything, and you know, this is our thumb is going to be, you know, firmly down on them, um, and how wrong they were, how very wrong they were. Now, this does set the stage for, you know, some even greater setbacks. And you know, why weren't the Lunars, you know, ready for this? Well, there are a couple of other things happening for them. That, you know, the Dragon Pass, like, it's important, and obviously it's the most important for the Sartorites, but it's only about the third thing that's important for the Lunar Empire, because there are two things that are really occupying their concern. One is a kind of heretical, or, you know, a belief, a lunar belief that undermines the authority of the emperor in his homelands, called the White Moon movement. It's a little unclear from the sources, you know, where the White Moon movement first appears, and whether it was, you know, for example, in existence during the original empire before the invasion of Shangri-Laris. But in any case, it's become firmly rooted, and it is a pacifistic movement. It is a movement that is anti-imperial. It is, well, the empire was an important stage. This is a little Marxist, right? You know, we have to go through one stage, and then now we're going to go through another stage, and it will be a glorious, you know, time of equality and peace. And
Late
we don't
stage
need,
lunar imperialism is
that's right,
really what this is.
that's right. You know, we don't need an emperor anymore. We don't need an army. We have shown the blessings of the lunar way, and now we can dismantle, you know, this machinery of violence, etc. And, you know, the peace and love of the moon will bring it from the red moon to the period of the white moon, this moon of peace. Well, the imperial machinery is not really very well disposed to this, and but they have to spend a lot of time on it. And at first they try to reason. They send Jariel, who has, you know, not just a rhetorical contest, but a magical contest, and she does so well that, in fact, you know, the leadership of the White Moon movement are so overcome by her arguments that they are bleeding from the eyes and the ears, and with the power of her argument. But this doesn't bring it to an end, and impatiently the imperial leadership says, well, then we're just going to mercilessly crush you. The home city of the movement disappears with
Yeah.
everyone in it. And this is taken badly. And there is, in fact, a popular uprising
Yeah.
of peasantry against the emperor in the heartland, and the sort of dissonance of a pacifistic movement suddenly taking up arms to create an insurgency in the lunar homeland, is a major distraction, shall we say. This may be why they sort of tried to take more shortcuts in Sartar. It's like, let's just be as brutal as possible there, because we need to focus on what's going on back home. But wait, it gets even worse. Or better, depending on your point of view. And that is that the nomads are coming back.
Yes. And that kind of ties into I'll let you go, Evan.
Oh, well, I mean, so in the early 1620s, a new organization, a new nomadic sort of pan nomadic movement called the Vor Ash begins to show up, begins to aggressively raid into the areas that the Lunars thought they had pacified after the Night of Horrors. And there is an individual, someone called the King of Wings, who is leading them. And by 1624, they have full-on invaded lunar heartland provinces. This is traumatic. Shing Celeris did this, and just turned farmland into pasture land, and it feels like that's happening all again. And it also feels like these people are trying to get Shing Celeris out of his imprisonment in lunar hells. And so this is an ongoing issue, and is developing in parallel with the sort of worm turning in Dragon Pass.
Yes.
So the full might of lunar military response is not available to deal with the rebellion in the south, because they have to protect they have to suppress rebellion and repel invasion simultaneously in the lunar heartlands.
And as you said, there was an attempt by the Lunars to sort of skip a couple of steps to rush through the pacification and occupation of Dragon Pass, and what was supposed to be the capstone on this plan is the Temple of the Reaching Moon. And we've talked a little bit about this, right? There are these temples throughout the lunar lands that extend this magical field known as the glow line, because lunar magic is based on the 7-day cycle of the moon. The more powerful, the fuller the moon is, the more powerful the lunar mages are. And inside the glow line, it's always a full moon. So if they had been able to complete the Temple of the Reaching Moon, that would have extended the glow line all the way through Dragon Pass.
The power is sort of evened out. So the glow line actually,
oh, that's true.
It gets rid of the really bad days, but it also it sort of trades off. So the moon may look full, but you're not getting that full
the full moon
boosted
bonus.
Power on those other days. But it means that the sort of thing that they saw with the invasion of Shing Celeris, where because of the mobility of his military, he could time his attacks on them when they were weakest.
Right.
And so
this prevents that.
Right.
It would have, except as Evan said,
right.
The worm turned. And that's
Right.
WYRM.
That's right.
Because rebels break into the ceremony, they disrupt it, and the loss of control, other factors may have played a part in this, awaken a true dragon beneath the temple. So again, if you are new here, I'm looking at you, Crip, right? Um, True dragons in Glorantha, the reason that it is called Dragon Pass is because all of those mountains are basically sleeping dragons. Um, and a dragon awakens and swallows the entire temple, as well as the lunar mages, as well as a large number of like VIPs who were there to sort of celebrate the finality of the conquest of Sartar. And this not only destroys their magical uh, power, but severely damages and destroys their their military and their administrative power, because a lot of these high-ranking officials who saw the whole plan, who were orchestrating, who were in these administrative positions in the empire to subdue Dragon Pass, are suddenly gone. And on top of that, you get the rising of Orlance Ring, which is kind of aided by Kalir Starbrow, who is then able to, again, declare herself the Prince of Sartar for the time being, but essentially kind of moves Orlance Ring, this constellations, including the boat planet, back into preeminence in the sky, and really is a massive challenge in the middle air to the lunar goddess and the moon. Yes, I agree. That event was terrifyingly awesome. It's an important event in character creation.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. If you and it's hard not to witness it because the dragon was something like 8 kilometers long.
Yeah,
I mean, when it rose into the sky after eating,
everyone in Dragon Pass saw it.
everyone, yeah, after eating, like half the lunar army, and all these VIPs. I will note, Pastor Wide Red was not invited because he was at that point out of favor. Quite fortunately for him,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it rises and flies at the moon again, sapping the Red Emperor's power to sort of deflect it. He is a sort of a demigod on Earth. The a true dragon is at least the equal, if not the superior, but it's it, it the dragons have their own agenda,
Yeah,
which are and the agenda is hard for human being, for mortals to really understand. The dragon did something. It did it because that's what
it
dragons
wanted to do at
do.
the time. Yeah.
And eventually it goes back and goes back to its nest there. But the temple has fallen down. The dignitaries are all dragon feed, and the world is changed.
I'm just going to go off on a little
Yeah.
tangent. That's also one of my favorite things about Glorantha, is the fact that the dragons you actually meet out in the world are fragments of the true dragon's dreams. So you could meet multiple dragons that are all really one dragon, but their dreams they're such potent magical creatures that even while they're sleeping, their dreams take on form and go running around
Yeah.
the
And
countryside, probably burninating the countryside if I'm
yeah.
being.
I mean, some of those dreams of the dragons are nightmares for the
Mm-hmm.
people around it. But I mean,
See the Dragon Kill War.
yeah, there. Well, yeah. Also have an episode on that.
Yes.
So, um, so yeah, so the Lunar Empire is very hard pressed. By 1625, Sartar is in full rebellion, and they have been expelled from Dragon Pass, except for Tarsh. Tarsh remains a loyal stronghold. Um, but they're hard pressed. They have internal rebellion. They have external
Yeah.
Invasion, and um, And then there's this guy, Collier Starbrow, controversial leader,
Hmm.
um, has done a great deal to turn back the lunar tide, but she is not very successful in uniting the tribes of Sartar, and um, uh, and she's unable to fully relight the flame. And as Jam mentioned, she has a disastrous Lightbringer quest, which she had participated in, a full hero quest.
Yeah.
It's called the Stationary Lightbringer quest. So she's not traveling around the world. She is reenacting the stations of the Lightbringer quest in a sacred space. And that goes poorly. It was meant to cement her rule, perhaps to
Very
bring more
poorly.
of Orlanth's power into her, so maybe she would be able to fully ignite the flame of Sartar. We're not entirely sure of all of her motivations, but it goes poorly. And so uh, uh, the Sardar is unable to fully, capitalize on the successes. Things are balanced on a knife edge, and often Pavis is this guy named Argrath. Um, Also has gone by very other monikers, Gareth Sharpsword,
Hmm.
other things. So let's talk a little bit about him, because it turns out he and his movement that he leads, his circle of followers,
Yeah.
heroes, close companions, are going to be pivotal in um, the rest of the Third Age, which is the story that you and your players write.
Right, and that's really the important thing. We're going to end with Argrath, but that's really the important thing about this episode. As was pointed out by people in the chat, this is the part of the story that your parents and your grandparents participated in, right? Because in RuneQuest Glorantha, you don't start with your character, you start with your family history. You start with, what did your grandparents do? What did your parents do? Where did they fight in the arc of this last bit of the third age that we were talking about? And the it all sets the stage for Argrath's coming to Sartar, but that's your character stories, that's your campaign. And as always, your Glorantha may vary. So, Evan, let's wrap this up with a discussion of Argrath, who, again, we've talked about how Greg Stafford really understood the mythologic cycle and how there are recapitulations and there are renewals of old themes and old characters that get dropped down into the subconscious, churned around, and come back up, or in Glorantha uh, sort of style, like move into the mythological realm, into the god time, and then kind of get recapitulated and brought back up. And Argrath is a type of Arcat, or Arcat is a forerunner of Argrath, depending on how you want to do this. So,
Yeah, Argrath. The name Argrath is a variation on the name Arcat, um, and there is good reason to believe that Argrath is in some ways a reincarnation of Arcat, and will play a similar role as the Destroyer. The change agent of the age, and just as the age ended in the first age, see our episode on that, with the destruction of the bright empire of Nicelor, Argrath may be on the collision course to transform and or end the Lunar Empire. So he's born, the official biography, he's born in 1596, so
mhm.
that's a few years before the official start of your player characters typically, but a little after your parents. So he's a young man, but a little bit older than your PCs in the
Mhm.
starting time of 1625. Um, his father is killed in the fall of Sartar. His mother is killed possibly by Telmori. He's raised by family members. He is from the Kolamar tribe, although there's always questions about this. He was part of maybe a lost clan that was sort of separated from the Kolimar, but had ties to it. And these ambiguities are things for you and your
Mm-hmm.
players to lean into, to make Argrath your own. What is what uh, who is he? Is he going to be pivotal? Is he just going to be off stage? Are your player characters related to him, or do they have some secret beefs with him? All of these things are rich areas for
True.
drama and character development.
Yeah.
So he's initiated to Orlanth. He's outlawed on the Starfire Ridge. There's a version of the story of why that happens
Yeah.
in the Prince of Sartar webcomic.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he kills a bunch of Lunars and then has to flee in order to not bring retribution down on his clan.
He becomes a
He
slave of the bison.
Right. He heads out to Prax and quickly gets captured and
Mm-hmm.
enslaved, and yet he he is the kind of transformative person who understands and quickly adapts to becoming essential for them, and he rediscovers the White Bull spirit, and even as a slave, starts the White Bull Society, or reignites it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the White Bull Society is something that is sort of in the background, is in the knowledge, but he somehow, the outsider, uh, returns it. He wins his freedom. He becomes the leader of the White Bull Society. He becomes a Wind Lord of Orlanth. He gains draconic insight. He begins to really become a player character. He starts to have all sorts of exciting adventures. He is
If I may,
involved.
if I may
Yeah,
interrupt, like one of my
yeah,
favorite adventures is the Giant's Cradle event of 1621, which, if you want to learn more about Argrath, I cannot highly recommend enough the Prince of Sartar webcomic. Like that is just a great
yeah.
overview of the several of the major events going on at this time. But essentially, the giants used to send their children on cradles loaded with treasures down to the sea, where they could go to the underworld and you know, grow up and then come back. And for a while, because of the magical treasures and the magical knowledge, these cradles were being plundered. And Argrath and a group of people actually managed to help escort one of these cradles for the first time in recorded memory uh, to complete its journey.
Right. Well, and this is part of Argrath's ambition and vision, because he's adventuring, he's gaining new insights, new powers, and he goes on a hero quest the year before the cradle appears, and the quest is to to steal the giant's cauldron, the drinking cauldron of a giant from God time. It's an Orlanthe myth, but instead of simply um, uh, following the myth and drinking from the cauldron to bring power to himself, he instead parlays this into a meeting with one of the elder giants, a giant named Gon Orda,
Yeah.
who lives up in the Rockwood Mountains, who is one of the Rockwood Mountains. Essentially,
Right.
he
He's
is.
grown so large and so old that he is slowly turning into
Yeah,
part of the mountain range.
right. and so he's part of the, if you go back to Griffin Mountain, Gonorda is a, and his castle are part of the Griffin Mountain sort
Yeah.
of sandbox. So Argrath makes a deal with Gonorda. He's like, let us bring the Elder Giants, back at least one more time. If you produce a child and a cradle comes down the River of Cradles,
Mhm.
the Zolafel, I swear to you that it will be protected, that it will not be plundered. The child will be safe. It will not be killed. Um, and the bargain is struck. And this is a potent friendship.
Mhm.
He is not only tied to dragons. He's not only tied to Orlanth. He's not only tied to the tribes of Prax, but now he's going to be a giant friend. And so the Cradle adventure, which happened to be the adventure for the RuneQuest Masters tournament,
Was it?
is yes,
Oh, that's
yes,
awesome.
it was, we survived, 2 rounds, and the third round was also, there is some exploration of the cradle and some negotiation, but mainly it is a lot of fighting. And it was very, very exciting. Every table was doing some part of the defense of the cradle in that tournament. And that's going to be run at a bunch of more places. It's going
Yeah.
to be run at Gen Con. It's going to be run at Chaosium Con UK, and I think many others. If you get a chance, it is worth doing, and a lot of fun. Very lethal, very dangerous. So the Giant's Cradle comes down in 1621. Argrath, in his guise as Gareth Sharpsword, hires many adventurers and heroes to defend it. The Cradle makes it down. They escape the Lunars. They go onto the ocean, and the Cradle is to go to the underworld for the child to grow. Argrath and his close companions are on the Cradle, but before it goes to the underworld, he meets our friend Herrick, who is leading the wolf pirates to
Mhm.
circumnavigate the oceans. He becomes a friend of Herrick. They travel around, and then they eventually make it back. They fight the Lunars in the Holy Country. He then is able to um, uh, come back, very experienced, more allies, activates the tribes of Prax, uh, uh, gets allies
Yes.
in the Holy Country, and
Summons Jaldon Goldtooth to
Golden.
liberate
Yes.
Prax, forms the Sartar Magical Union,
Yep.
and in 1627 defeats the Lunar army, liberates Aldachor, and becomes the Prince of Sartar. But that's not the end of the story, and if you want to know more, you should
And
really check out the King of Sartar book by Chaosium.
absolutely. And so he's going to be woven
Mm-hmm.
through either off stage or center stage, uh, your uh, your game. And in 1625, he is preparing to invade and to aid Sartar, but he's the king of Pavis, and he has many factions to sort of balance. So the new setting for the new rune quest is going to be you being in Pavis and exploring and helping by developing sort of his control and information that can be won from the rubble and your own glory and enrichment. Are you going to ride off with him back to Sartar, or are you going to help hold things together in Pavis and Prax? And sometime in the beyond the start of your game, and which traditionally starts in 1625 now, Argrath is going to show up, and that's going to impact what you and your players are doing to one degree or another. You can ignore it. You can lean into it. It can be something that weaves in and out, and this is part of the excitement
Yeah.
of this setting and of this time period. And then the rest of the third age is for you to define, and what, now that the hero wars have started, will your heroes do?
And I just have to say, when I was running my uh, pretty long running, like 2.5, 3 year RuneQuest Glorantha game before we moved down here to Texas, my group wanted to go meet White Bull and make an alliance. And I could think of nobody better to jump in and play White Bull than Evan. And so Evan, my group showed up ready to negotiate with me. And instead, they had to negotiate with Argrath. And Evan really embodied White Bull in a very real way for my group. So I know I keep saying this, but thank you, Evan. That was one of the highlights of that game for me.
It was a lot of fun, and it was already, that I should say, sort of in closing here, JM had changed the chronology. It was already off the official history, but what is history? um you define what is happening in your game, and so the timeline was different, and some of the actions were different, and that made it all the more awesome. And it was a lot of fun to do that sort of cameo, uh to play that. And that's also happening in the RQ
Mhm.
Masters tournament. There's somebody who's playing Gareth Sharpsword, and urging you on, and sometimes bringing you a little help. And it's it's fun to interact with those characters, while your heroes are still center stage to your story.
So that's it. That's the end of the third age discussion. That's the end of our temporal look at the landscape of Glorantha. We may do an episode on the future on the end of the third age of the Hero Wars, at least it is as it is outlined by the guide, 13th Age Glorantha and the King of Sartar. But we've got some very cool content coming up, and we hope you'll join us next month for more exploring Glorantha. Evan, as always, I just thoroughly enjoy these discussions with you.
Likewise.
Thanks to everyone in the chat, and I think we're going to wrap this one up. So until next time, go play some Glorantha, whether that's RuneQuest or Quest Worlds or the wonderful 13th Age Glorantha that does just have a new book that came out for it, Red Moon and Warring Kingdoms by our own F and Frankie.
PDF free download, Johnstown Compendium.
Until next month,